This is the Media Police Post, broadcasting from the Fort Hall School of Government. In this show, we police the state of truth in the Republic. And because truth is communicated to us by journalists and analysts, we have made it our civic duty at the Fort Hall School of Government to put it to the test. We advance from two confirmed truths about the media. One, and according to Roger Stone, the media is either lazy or evil. And for the most part, it is both evil and lazy. That is why the truth, their truth, must be put to a test. Two, that journalism is verified gossip. In fact, what is presented to us as news analysis is gossip that has been verified by journalists. This gossip has to be ground truthed. We will assess the state of truth in what they submit to the Republic, and we will pass a verdict on what is true and what is not. For the record, we are not journalists. We are thinkers. We are not lazy or evil, and we do not verify gossip. What we give you is the truth that sets you free. On today's show, we will discuss ideas that reflect unformed and uninformed opinions, and ideas that made you stupid. Narratives that fell into the cognitive trap of we see things as we are, not as they are. Narratives based on conjecture history and those that smack of envelope journalism. Before we begin, welcome AX and GW on your debut.
Thank you very much.
Karibu sana. AX, why don't you kick us off with your analysis?
With pleasure. So today I would like to respond to an opinion piece in the Daily Nation by Peter Kagwanja. The piece is titled Unmasking the Real Power Behind RUTO's Hustler Nation Juggernaut. In it, Kagwanja suggests that RUTO's success is not rooted in the Hustler Nation's ability to persuade the masses, but rather in anti-Raila sentiment amongst Kenya's biggest voting bloc, Gema. With Gema's 5.6 million votes, they are the kingmakers. And Kagwanja argues that after decades of political conditioning by the Kalenjin barons, the children of Mumbi do not trust Raila as far as they can throw him. Now, Kagwanja's thinking was somewhat lacking. His argument reduces the merits of Raila's candidacy to just one thing: Raila's ability to successfully summit the mountain. Therein, Kagwanja does one of Kenya's preeminent leaders a great disservice. Kagwanja also makes reference to, but does not explain why Gema is hostile to Babaman. More to the point, Kagwanja seems to assume that this hostility is absolute and permanent, not simply relative and temporary. Kagwanja is able to do so because of the model he is working with. In this model, Raila has been persona non grata in the House of Mumbi for close to 2 decades. To welcome Raila into the House of Mumbi, we must, according to Buckminster Fuller, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete.
Yes.
And the cornerstone of our new model is very simple: a debt is owed. Kagwanja makes the mistake of regarding Raila's positioning in the absence of history, and history tells us that Gema owes a debt to Raila Odinga. My mother always told me, Deni ni ahadi, kulipa ni muamana. Or in English, you must pay back your debts. It's very simple. And at every critical juncture of this nation's history, the Odingas have invested in Gema. Were it not for Jaramogi rallying support behind Mzee Kenyatta in 1958, the Kenyan Republic would have fallen before we could rise. With 3 words, Mzee Kenyatta Tosha, a republic was born. Were it not for Raila in 2002, Kibaki would not have been president. With 2 words, Kibaki Tosha, Raila catapulted Kibaki to victory. Without Raila, Kibaki's popularity would not have extended beyond Nairobi, central and eastern Kenya, Kibaki's strongholds in 1997. And in the glow of a Kibaki victory, Raila was welcomed into Nyeri with wild cheers from Kikuyus calling him Mtungoria Njamba, a Mutungoria of the highest order. Raila is the candidate for such a time as this. The de facto opposition leader who, in his tenure, would understand the value of good faith opposition. The esteemed leader whose prolonged fight for democracy motivates him to preserve its institutions. And above all, a man to whom a debt is owed. If Raila can be welcomed up the mountain once, he can be welcomed up the mountain again. contrary to what Kwagwanja might have us believe.
Excellent analysis, AX. Now, today, I'd like to talk about the headline in the Star newspaper, which reads, "Fresh plot to delay the 2022 election." Dear peoples of Kenya, isn't it curious that the Star writers are alluding to a plot? We are officially 365 days to the election. Is this the right time to insinuate foul play? Now, this headline story speaks of the case in the High Court to postpone the election and give the IEBC adequate time to conduct boundary delimitation. It also refers to a letter arguing on behalf of the president, addressed to the IBC boss Wafula Chebukati and the Attorney General, which says having the election on the August 9th, 2022 will be unconstitutional and reduce Uhuru's term by 5 more months. Is it foul play for the president to demand his constitutional right? In our take, to deny the president his full term is an unconstitutional constitutional interpretation, and that the president has every right to take this to court. Remember, in 2013 and also more recently in 2017, as a result of the contested elections, the president has not fulfilled his full term. As per Article 142 of the Constitution, the president shall hold office for a term beginning on the date when the president was sworn in and ending when the person next elected president in accordance with Article 136(2)(a) is sworn in. This term is not defined, but it is implied. If we're to follow the Constitution, then the president's term is set to end on November 27th, 2022. Whatever the case, the president has not done his full term. The article refers to a sinister plot, yet we know the courts have been engaging in sinister rulings. So, the outcome of the ruling could go either way. Only time will tell. Now, in the meantime, decisions from other quarters seem to be in favor of the president. More recently, the Africa Court on Human and People's Rights on the 16th of July 2021 said that African Union member states have the liberty to hold off on elections for up to 1 year due to the uncertainties brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Come on, guys. They, however, have to be guided by the country's relevant constitution. As per our situation, the general election can only be postponed if Kenya was at war. Now, can this pandemic be equated to a war and, serve as a justification to postpone the elections? Now, whichever way the case in the High Court of Kenya will pan out, it looks like the African Court has thrown a lifeline to the president to finish his legacy projects. And whether or not he takes it is dependent on the myriad of events that could unfold.
Interesting perspective, GW. And you see, it wouldn't just be denying the president the right to enjoy his full term. It would also be denying those who voted him in. It would be denying the electorate their voice. And as we know, the voice of the people is the voice of God. Picking up from where you've left off, all things remaining equal, and they probably won't, if elections are held 1 year from today, a high level of scrutiny must be visited on those who desire to be elevated to the highest office within our borders. It is in this context that we commence our final submission to you with an insight from theoretical physicist Robert Oppenheimer, who was one of the fathers of the atomic bomb. He shared a profound insight on the scrutiny of leaders. He said, "We do not believe any group of men adequate enough or wise enough to operate without scrutiny or without criticism. We know that the only way to avoid error is to detect it, that the only way to detect it is to be free to inquire. We know that in secrecy, error, undetected, will flourish and subvert." Now, among the most prominent of those who have laid bare their desire for the presidency, there is one who has been the highest ranking state officer, second only to the president, for close to 9 years. In light of Chapter 6 of our Constitution on Leadership and Integrity, which references the term state officer 15 times, it follows that DP RUTO, more than anyone, should be held to the highest level of scrutiny. Increasingly, Kenyans are starting to ask incisive questions about this man and his numerous contradictions.
True.
One such puzzling question which is emerging is why RUTO, especially as someone who hopes to become president, has not issued a single statement, even to simply disassociate himself from the ongoing ICC case against Paul Gicheru, yet his name repeatedly comes up. Granted, it is Paul Gicheru that is on trial officially. However, if the primary argument the ICC prosecution is advancing is that Paul Gicheru is accused of interfering with witnesses in the ICC process for the benefit of William RUTO, then it follows that de facto William RUTO is also on trial. And it doesn't help recalling the fact that RUTO was not acquitted for having a case to answer in respect of crimes against humanity.
Yes.
And now it is emerging that the likely reason the RUTO case was suspended was probably because of meddling and interference. Here's another question. If William RUTO has no connection with the Paul Gicheru case, then why did new ICC Chief Prosecutor Karim Khan, Queen's Counsel, who was RUTO's lawyer, recuse himself from handling the Gicheru case? What is the connection? And why has RUTO maintained radio silence on a matter before the International Criminal Court where his name keeps coming up? Surely, it wouldn't be sub judice to disassociate yourself, would it? And if it would be sub judice for RUTO to disassociate himself, then doesn't it confirm that the question of his involvement is at the heart of the case? By the way, we also found it curious that considering that this whole ICC debacle ultimately boils down to questions of ethnicity and ethnic-based violence, the question that then arises is this. When RUTO tells us that he is determined to change the national conversation from ethnicity to bottom-up economics, is it really because he wants to advance the nature of debate to economic models? Or is it because he's running away from accountability on the ethnic question and goes from the past? This is a man who was caught on camera saying that no one has a bigger problem with Kikuyus than them.
Mimi nauliza nyinyi, kama mko na shida na Wakikuyu, hamuko na shida na Wakikuyu kuliko sisi wa Kalenjin. Tuko na shida kubwa zaidi. Sawa sawa? Lakini ikifika mahali unatofautisha maneno, unaweka maneno ya tofauti za kijamii kando, unatafuta serikali kwanza, kwa sababu ile serikali itakusaidia kutatua matatizo ulio nayo.
Is there a cry from the ground accusing Cain for sins committed against Abel? Is the man who would be king his brother's keeper? Thank you for joining us on the Media Police Post. See you next Monday. Journalists, you have been put on notice.